We're live on the YouTube.
All righty. Welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It is March 12th. And we'll just go around the room and quickly introduce ourselves. Then we'd like to let everybody in the room quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll turn it over to you for the record. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District.
Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury, County, Essex.
Richard Bailey, Memorial 2.
Chris Morrow, Windsor, Bennington. Michael Southwood, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Sarah Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Klubner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilio, London 2.
Lynn Würzburg, St. Johnsbury.
Jack DePlato, Burlington.
Doug Quinlan, Burlington. John Adrian for Burlington.
Hey, Jack.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
Don McIntyre, North End of Burlington.
Virginia Clark, I'm from Richmond. Okay, and for the record, you are, and you're here with.
I'm John Adrian, family physician trained, and I'm here at Vermont Health and Climate Alliance.
Super.
I'm Dan Quinlan. I'm the leader of the Vermont Climate Health Alliance, and I run similar groups in other states.
Great, thanks. Well, we're here today to hear about your work and the testimony that you'd like to provide us. So over to you.
Okay, I'll start. I moved here to Vermont in 1984 to start a family physician, family practice office in St. Johnsbury. Worked there most of my career until 3 years ago. I moved to Burlington and then worked in the urgent care at Fanny Allen Hospital. So, and over the meantime, I've worked also at Alice Day in Lebanon, New Hampshire, and worked in the emergency department also in St. Johnsbury and at Alice Day. So I've seen the effects of climate change directly on my patients that I've taken care of throughout the state, in St. Johnsbury, Lebanon, New Hampshire area, as well as in Burlington at urgent care in Colchester. The amount of asthma related to wildfire smoke. We've seen exacerbations of chronic lung disease. When I first moved here, Lyme disease was not something we saw very often because the ticks were not as common here as they are now with the change in the climate we've seen. And almost daily at urgent care in Colchester as taking ticks off people, treating people for Lyme disease, as well as preventing Lyme disease in my patients there. So I've seen firsthand and taking care of many, many people in the hospital related to chronic lung disease. And, initially many years ago, it was an effort to get lead out of gasoline. There was lots of time for, even though the evidence was there, to finally get lead out of our gasoline that was polluting our air and water. The same with tobacco. It took many, many years, even though we knew tobacco was harmful, to get effective action on that. Now we're with climate change, and we see it here. We see it in the flooding and the impact on our communities, on the people having increased trouble affording insurance for their homes. They have to make choices between health insurance for their homes versus taking care of their health. They have to make choices. And so we really don't want to roll back into the climate initiatives that we've already started taking. And I know there's this bill H289 that is trying to roll back some of the climate initiatives that we've taken. And we can see what's happening on the federal level with some of the rollbacks that they're trying to do. So it's up to our states to keep the ball rolling, even though we're a small state. We import all of the fossil fuels and we import much of the things we need to do, and that transportation and our homes, the thermal demands that we have, we need to make a change, and time is now. So I would encourage you to oppose the H289 bill because it's going to roll back things that we can't afford to do.
So first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to come talk to all of you. We really appreciate the fact that you show up at the State House every day, every Monday. We know this is a really hard job. You have an incredible amount of complicated issues to deal with. And, every one of you is a role model for the rest of us and for the citizens of Vermont. And the fact that we can come here and sit in this little room and talk to you is amazing. And it's democracy in action. And so thank you. I just want to start with that. And thank you and your community. I deal with physicians all the time who are taking care of all of us. And we know that job's getting harder and harder. So I've spent the last 10 years doing what I'm doing right now. So let me step back a little. 1988, I worked at Bell Labs. I'm originally a physicist. The NASA folks who came forward on climate change came to Bell Labs. They brought the data. They gave it to our mathematics department. Say, are we right? Is there a rising trend? And it's a trivial math problem, actually, but we have some of the most powerful mathematicians in the country. Bell Labs went over the data. They came back, said, absolutely, temperature's rising. It's irrefutable. Took me 20 years to understand what that meant, and I did a bunch of other things. I have a background, as I said, in physics and business and finance for a Fortune 50 company. And then, frankly, after 9/11, I woke up and inspired by the people who got out of the business sector and decided, go find a cause. And this became my cause. And eventually I began to realize that climate change is fundamentally a health problem. And that's what we're here to talk about today. If you want to do some reading that will reinforce what I'm saying, there's a pediatrician out of Arizona, Deb Hendrickson, who just recently wrote a book. It's called A Pediatrician on the Front Lines of Climate Change. And we did a national webinar with Deb, and she talks about the problems happening out in Nevada, where she's from. So John talked a little bit about the direct health impacts of things we worry about, Lyme's disease and potential for people getting hurt in storms. But I want to talk about a second piece. And that's the social determinants of health piece. So that's defined as the conditions in the places where people live, learn, work, and play that affect virtually all health and quality of life incomes. So the most obvious idea there is that people get severe storms. They tear up our roads and bridges. They destroy farmers' fields and crops. They can prevent the delivery of goods. I mean, they turn life upside down. And then what happens is those people are affected either directly by that event or because of long-term psychological impacts, they end up with mental challenges. Mental health is the number one issue on climate change. It is the number one issue, and we have the data to back that up across all generations. Older people like me are worried about our grandkids and young kids. Some of these folks here, Jack could be the representative. Sorry to put you on the spot, Jack. They're worried about their future, and they should be. And I'm not saying, please don't misinterpret that we don't understand the other challenges that you're trying to balance. We absolutely do. So I want to make sure I say that. So in 2017 was the first time we came to the State House. In fact, we talked to the governor and we brought this diagram. This is from the CDC. And the way this works is on the inside, here's the weather events that people are worried about. So extreme heat, air pollution, storms, heavy storms, things like that. Air pollution is one that's people don't quite get as often, but here we're talking about air pollution coming out of cars and generation. So anything that's pumping carbon into the air has both direct impacts on wildfire smoke. Great example, right? Wildfire smoke is a great example. So when we came here in 2017, the only one we were talking about and could say was happening in Vermont was here. Vector-borne, it's called vector-borne disease. This is Lyme disease. So vectors are insects that carry things. Now, every single one of these, I can point to examples that have happened. This is only 8 years since we brought this. 8 years. This diagram is 15 years old. So the science has been, it's happening. It's happening in Vermont. And we can talk more about that, but I want to give you one example. So in around the same time, I started to go around with some folks in the Vermont Department of Public Health who were doing modeling on rain events. And the conclusion, so that was forward-looking, and the conclusion that clearly more frequent and severe rain events were going to come. So fast forward now, 2023, 2024, we're slammed with 3 major floods in a period of less than 18 months. The 2024 flooding alone affected 28,000 acres of farmland and caused over $16 million in losses and damages. In the press conference that we just did, we had a farmer who lost her business because of it. So that's a health issue, right? Because we're concerned about what happened to her family, both her mental health or physical health, and all these other farmers. So that is pivotal. Those are the people we take care of, right, in the hospital. And so we see these linkages not just here, but across the country. So I guess I just want to say, the other thing I want to say is all the major professional organizations in the United States, the AMA, the American Nurses Association, the American Public Health Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and we had a poster with another 30 on, have all issued the same warning that we're trying to issue here. Now, again, scary news. You guys know this. We're reinforcing it. And there's a balancing act that has to happen, but we can't delay anymore. If the data is clear, we are going too slow as a nation, as a country, as a state. This is a worldwide problem. And the idea that Vermont is a small contributor is nonsense. And there's two reasons for that, because when we release carbon in the air, it doesn't care about borders. It goes right across them. That's the first issue. The second issue, everything in this room, everything you're wearing, everything we're touching, wasn't made in Vermont. It was made somewhere else. And that took energy to mine, to bring to factories, to build stuff, and then to ship it here. So our carbon footprint through what we use and every day is huge. It's smaller than the other footprints that we talk about. So we're all in this together, and everybody is kind of pointing at other folks. That's understandable, but we're running out of time. And our kids are in big, big, big trouble. And there's a huge bill coming forward. We're already seeing that. I would bet. So in my little group, another thing I do, we create a little report and we try to understand how many programs were going on in state government around climate change. And we wanted to get the budget information, but we couldn't get that. We counted 114, and I can give you the report, 114 programs going on across state government related to climate change. Flooding is an obvious one, and on and on. Two things that were not happening. One, at that time, there was no money set aside for how businesses were going to get slammed. And that's what we're talking about with farmers, right? And so I would love to see it, and we hope that through the Global Warming Solutions Act or something else, there is a full accountability. How much are we spending today? Burlington has passed a bond for 150 million on water treatment. And that's the second one. And if better for your own state, I bet you're going to find $250 million that's been spent on water treatment plants. And most of that is because they can't handle the heavy floods. The expenses here, it's hitting taxpayers. So it's a false narrative. I understand we have to get this balance about, and we really, I think, want to reinforce there really is a care, particularly in our community, but I think among everybody, that we need to take care of all Vermonters. And we see the people at the bottom ring, what happens to them. We care about that stuff and we understand this balance, but we believe that the bills that are put forward do a very good job of that. And if people want to push on that and make it better, sure, okay, we get that. But the narrative that all this is going to cost low income folks and marginalized people more than they can handle is, I don't think it's true if you look at the numbers, but I can't back that up in terms of energy costs. Maybe you guys can. But it's certainly true in the people who get sent to the hospital. And I can also show you data on the weatherization program, actually, that came out of the Department of Health, reduces healthcare costs for low-income people from that program. That's data, hard data coming out of the department. So that's what we wanted to bring across today. And again, open question. But again, thank you for what you're trying to do.
I think Representative Sibilia had her hand up first, and then Rep. Flickner.
I would love to see that data.
Yes. Okay. We'll do. I mean, I also wonder, could you folks just invite folks in the Department of Health down? They can talk about all this, but I'm happy to get you updated.
Yeah, so as we start working on bills in the second half of the session, we invite witnesses in as they become sort of relevant to our work. So absolutely. Yeah.
So two quick points. And point zero before I get to 1 and 2 is I'm sorry we don't have more time because there is a great deal to talk about. I don't think you would get an argument from any of us about the health effects on Vermonters of flooding and Lyme disease and all those things. Like, no question. However, it is also true that Vermont's contribution to global carbon emissions are something like 0.07%. And reducing that is not going to reduce flooding in Vermont. Now, I'm, not taking a position on whether we have an obligation to do our part and reduce emissions the way they're applied, setting all that aside. However, what would be really helpful to me and perhaps to others on this committee is understanding the health effects of those emissions. You gave an example of weatherization improving people's health. And I would love to understand better what we can measure in terms of the health effects of replacing old heating equipment with heat pumps for the air quality inside the home. I would love to understand the health effects on children of replacing school buses with diesel engines with electric school buses. So the immediate health benefits to reducing emissions in Vermont would be helpful. And one other thing that I've been wondering about, do you know if anyone has taken a look at the negative effects on health of people's sleep being disrupted by hotter nights? And therefore what the benefit might be of adding heat pumps to provide cooler environments for people to sleep in the summer. Thank you.
Definitely have data on the first two, and we can get into that. Those are topics that are coming up all over the country. And a lot of the air quality stuff comes off the American Lung Association. They just initiated just sent out their first state of the air, or their 2025 state of the air report, which has this kind of data on every state. So we get and there's electric buses info we can get here because we've been part of those conversations.
And I'm sorry, I had one of 2
Well,
points.
but the last one I got,
Yeah.
we have heat wave data, but that's more on what's sending people to the hospital. So I have to see.
Yeah, I was just thinking
See if
about
I
the
can find that
importance
out.
of sleep
That's a
to
good
health
question.
and how that's getting disrupted. And a similar one, the effects of vehicular noise pollution on people's health, which is also a way that local, if there is a meaningful effect of noise pollution on health, then there is a meaningful benefit to be gained by electrifying the vehicles that are producing that engine noise that is disrupting people's well-being.
Rectory,
Well, I have a part of the answer. One of the questions.
for the record, sorry if you could identify yourself just for the record.
Don McIntyre. And in the cities where there was a change from petroleum-based fuel to electric buses, they found that the kids had much less respiratory illness, but also the people living along the bus line did in the houses along it was reduced. So it really, that is good data.
I'd love to see the data. I mean, I believe that it makes intuitive sense, but I'd love to see the data. That would be helpful to us if
It's not hard to.
someone can get that to us. Thank you.
We can do that.
Rex Abelia, do you have your hand up? Oh, sorry, Rectory.
Thank you so much for your dedication and your work in this field. I was curious, just because of your relationship with clinicians, do you also advocate for work on the hospital facility level to be more sustainable in delivering medical services?
Great question. The healthcare industry puts out 12% of all carbon emissions in the country. And this is actually where I started because it fit my background in engineering and finance. UVM's done a lot, could do a lot more. But there's economic issues there. Yes, so we do push on that. It's really hard because of all the challenges. The problem is that the finance people, so I have a finance background, but around a lot of financial people. Finance people in healthcare, I'm not just talking about UVM, all over, they don't think about things in this way. This is project finance. So we're going to build something. What's the return on investment? They don't think that way. They're finance heads from the places. So for everything from replacing electric light bulbs to all the way actually putting on-site wind, we have data that's 15, 20 years old that shows what the paybacks are on those things. And as the project gets more complicated and expensive, the payback period goes up. So they're more reluctant. Electric lights will get payback in a year. It's unbelievable. It's great. Putting on-site wind somewhere and some of the more advanced cooling systems. Well, UVM's got a lot of that. So how to summarize. In Vermont, I think should happen is, I don't understand, well, I understand why there's a problem in terms of legislation, but more and more power that UVM is using should be renewable. I mean, I just don't understand. We need to have, I get that people don't want to see turbines on the hills. I get less why they don't want to see solar on the ground, but in 20 years, our kids will be, if we do it, our kids will be walking around saying, thank God they put the turbines up. Thank God they please put solar on. I mean, why isn't UVM covered with solar panels? And they don't even begin to go down that route because the siting issues are so massive and the other issues around it. So, and now you might say, well, because it's a poor investment. No, I can show you data. It's 15 years old from all over the country. We're putting solar all over the place in healthcare systems. We have that data. We can show it to you. So, long way around of answering your question. It's a really hard thing because of the combination of the legislation and siting, with siting issues, and the way the financial folks think. But nevertheless, we can, and there's so much data, case study data, that can be brought to UVM. And the most outrageous, incredible one that I will mention was there's a hospital, many hospitals are there now, they're net zero. There are several hospitals, big systems that are doing it. The number one was in Gunderston Hospital. That was 15 years ago, they had net zero. And the CEO, who's a doc, did all these amazing things, including there was a brewery across the way. It had a lot of waste heat coming out of it. So they pumped the waste heat across onto their campus and they heat the whole campus and generate electricity for the whole campus and that thing. And now they're making money. I mean, they're saving money on respect to energy costs. That's the other thing with all this. You actually reduce your operational costs, but it's the upfront investment that's the problem. Then over long term, your operational costs go down. Long answer. Yeah, and some of our group are trying to push within the hospital as best they can.
Thank you.
We have time for one more. Rep. Sibelia?
Okay, and this may be a long answer, so I'm happy to take it afterwards. But one of the arguments that is hard to refute, that we hear against taking action on climate in Vermont is that it doesn't matter. Like what we do does not matter. It's not going to stop climate change. And that is like, we are not going to stop climate change in Vermont. And I am aware of the argument of everybody needs to do their part. That is not what I'm asking. What are the priority actions that we could take in Vermont that will have a difference for our citizens, specifically in terms of how they're managing the effects of climate change?
Yeah.
So are there specific things we could do to help our citizens?
So one I'll throw out is what's the discussion about Efficiency Vermont. So I used to work for Efficiency Vermont back in the day, having a long time. And we actually were running around the country talking about Efficiency Vermont. And we were funded to do that as consultants. We went, oh, it's an amazing program. So I think it makes a ton of sense to let them move into the thermal arena. They're very good at what they do. They're very smart. They understand the market dynamics. They understand trying to make sure that everybody's served equitably. So that's one.
Okay, and I know we have to end, but I would say, I'm not sure that answered my question.
Okay.
I mean,
Say it again.
so I would follow up and say, regret, can you repeat the question, Madam Chair? You know, how is that positively impacting Vermonters specific?
Lowering their energy costs.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
I'd just like to counter with, I think the question you ask is everyone in this room has thought about that we're so small, what difference is it going to make? But it does make a difference. And it might not be something you're going to see immediately in a state like this with this population density, but you can't just prove that argument that we all have to do things that our bits are what we should do. And if everyone takes the attitude, nothing will be done. We've got to do it. I mean, if everyone says that, you can't just start the argument with saying, we know that we're not going to make a difference because we do make a difference. It's not enough. It has to be a unified distance.
Yeah,
I mean,
I wholeheartedly
wholeheartedly agree with you. It's just the argument that gets made against taking action. And I think there are other points that we should help people understand besides
I
that.
think, John, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and we are a small state. But for example, I'm on the energy committee, I'm chair of it at our condominium complex in Berlin. We just put 7 new electric stations in to plug cars in. And we're already seeing that more people are buying plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles. So instantly, people getting rid of their gas-powered cars, we're going to see cleaner air immediately. Now, is that measurable from our little condominium complex? No, but it's a step. And if we think about electrifying buses instead of diesel, again, when the buses are parking, idling at our schools, along with everybody else at the school waiting to pick their kids up or drop them off, if there are more electric vehicles, that air is going to be instantly cleaner. Instantly. Now, it's going to dissipate pretty quick because the carbon floats around. But you got to start.
Great.
And for me, it's a yes, and we do have to wrap. I'm sorry, we'd love to have you back, but for me, it's a yes, and you definitely don't need to convince me that Vermont that we need to be doing our part, but and I simultaneously am very focused on how we can help Vermonters, respond, how we can help them make the transition themselves, because for every Vermonter that we help weatherize their home, we're giving a warmer, safer environment. We're helping them save money on their energy bills. For every Vermonter we help get into an EV, we're helping them not only wean off fossil fuels, but save a ton of money on gas. And for every Vermonter that we help manage the health impacts of climate change, we're helping folks stay healthier. So it's a yes and on all fronts for me. And I'm sorry that we do have to go and that our time with you was limited, but please do send the data. We're a big data committee, and any testimony you guys can submit on the health impacts on Vermonters of a change in climate, we'd love to see, and we will read.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.